Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Jenkins, and I'm Managing Director of ThePackHub, a leading UK consultancy in packaging innovation. Welcome to our latest webinar, Securing the Future of Packaging Industry Through Education. Today's session is a bit different from our usual focus on the packaging trends and innovations. So this time we are addressing the crucial opportunities in packaging education. Having been in the packaging industry for many years myself, I can relate to many of you who, like me, didn't initially choose this career path. Just last night, I conducted an informal and very unscientific LinkedIn post that revealed that about 70% of the packaging professionals that submitted the post also stumbled into the industry. So imagine the potential talent we could attract if there was a clear educational pathway leading to a career in packaging. Well, I'm thrilled to introduce our esteemed speakers. We've got Joe Stephenson, Managing Director of PhD Marketing, and Peter MacQueen, Principal Lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University. We will have a dedicated Q&A session at the end, so please use the Q&A box on the screens to submit your questions. Additionally, a recording of this webinar will be made available by tomorrow for you to rewatch or share with your colleagues. So without further ado, let me hand you over to Joanna. So the floor is yours, Jo.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it. Get the screen moving, sorry. So thank you for the introduction, Paul. As you mentioned, we're going to be talking about how education can support the future of our industry. And what I wanted to do just briefly was give some context to what's going on in the UK, particularly at the moment. It is an issue that affects various countries around the world, but we seem to be in a particularly dire situation in the UK. And I'm delighted that Peter from Sheffield Hallam University agreed to come and present on the capability of that particular education facility in terms of helping our industry. And for those of you who know me, I've been a big advocate of attracting talent, and particularly things like gender diversity in the industry over the past few years, having grown up in the packaging industry. But I'm extremely passionate about seeing the career paths being built for the industry, particularly in view of the aging population that we have today. So very quickly, just to give us some insight to the UK packaging market itself, it's a sizable market. The market size in 2024 is estimated to be about just under £60 billion, and it's growing at just over 2%. And typically we talk about packaging markets roughly running in line with GDP. So seeing a 2.27% growth up to 2029 is quite encouraging. Importantly, the market concentration is actually very low. You see certain sectors like corrugate that are consolidating very quickly, and particularly in metal and glass. But there are literally hundreds of companies out there needing support from a recruitment and talent perspective. And it's estimated today that there are actually 2,571 packaging companies in the UK alone, all of whom have no educational support today in terms of bringing new talent into the businesses or developing the talent that they've got within them. The Packaging Federation estimate that 85,000 people alone work in packaging manufacturing today. That's 3% of the UK manufacturing workforce. And as Paul said at the start of the webinar, we're all falling into the industry. There's no education route in. I believe a few years ago, packaging was actually on the primary curriculum. And I know for myself, I have a daughter now who's 19, but at the time when she was 8-9 years old, she did a module on packaging, which involved painting pizza boxes. And that was the sum total of her understanding of packaging. She'd got a mother that was working in modified atmosphere thermoform trays, and she understood perfectly well that there were technologies out there that extended the shelf life of products. So it was almost a bit of an insult as to what happened with that education at the primary level. So we've got a long way to go as a country in terms of driving awareness of the industry and education and training to bring people through and out of the school education system thinking about the packaging sector as a viable career for them. So what are the challenges that the packaging industry has today? Well, fundamentally, there's limited awareness of the sector, the scale of the sector, the size of it, and the complexity of it. And when you talk to people, I'm sure if you're with friends or over dinner, you talk about being in the packaging industry, you almost get a feel that there's a negative perception of what it's all about. At the end of the day, packaging is frequently perceived as waste. It's considered unsustainable, and it's considered an old-fashioned industry. And unfortunately, that's due to a lot of the negative PR that has gone on around plastics in particular, and the advent of the Blue Planet series in 2016, where packaging and plastic was very much blamed for a lot of the marine litter and environmental issues that the world has today. So it's really negatively damaged the reputation of what is a vibrant and positive business sector. There is also limited perceived connection to the exciting world of FMCG. If you see kids coming out of school wanting to work with big brands, the L'Oreals, the Nestle's, the GSK's of the world, they don't connect the packaging supply chain to that. And therefore, packaging suffers again as a supply chain. In fact, it's absolutely linked to that blue chip world, and yet it's not connected in perception. And fundamentally today, the packaging sector is competing with what students consider more glamorous sectors, be that technology, aerospace, digital roles, or biosciences, more industry 4.0 businesses. They just don't see packaging competing in that era. It has a negative reputation, a negative perception, and therefore we struggle for our share of that talent coming through the schooling and university system. It's only when they're exposed to our industry by falling into it like the rest of us that they realise that the opportunities are there. And as we said, there's no obvious pathway to the industry in the first place, which limits our potential. The good news is that we have huge opportunities as a sector to change that perception and change our story. What we're learning about Gen Zs and millennials is that young talent are wanting to move into businesses that have a purpose, that are trying to do something to restructure the way the world works. Sustainability is clearly an attractive topic for young talent. They're wanting to go into businesses that are tackling sustainability issues or are sustainable in themselves. And actually, university education is now being considered unaffordable for many, and degree apprenticeships are a way to solve that problem. When we look at the industry itself, we have numerous macro packaging market drivers that are changing the industry, from technology to sustainability to increasing legislation. There are numerous factors driving our market, opening up opportunities, opening up careers. It's how we communicate those messages out there that's the challenge, and education is one route to that. So my view, as I set up for Peter to take over, is our problem is actually really simple to solve. We've got two fundamental challenges: education and industry PR. We need to put more effort into the education structure in order to create a natural path through into the packaging industry in the first place. And indeed, we need to be supporting talent within companies as well, with things like this degree apprenticeship that we're going to talk about now. And secondarily, we have to stack hands as an industry to improve the reputation and credibility of our industry versus those other competing verticals that I talked about. So it is about a little bit of industry PR, which fundamentally is my background in marketing. So on that note, I'm going to hand to Peter, and he will walk you through all about the Sheffield Hallam Degree Apprenticeship Programme.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Peter MacQueen. I'm a Principal Lecturer here at Sheffield Hallam University. As I hear, we're in a beautiful boardroom in a hotel in Liverpool, but you can just imagine for a minute that we're in sunny Sheffield. So I'm a Principal Lecturer in the wider Department of Art and Design, but I do have a very specific interest in packaging. And when it comes to packaging education, other people alluded to it, we're pretty unique. I run the only Bachelor of Sciences, the only degree level programme in packaging that exists in the UK. But more broadly, when we're talking about packaging education, I want to talk about the landscape that's got us to this point, the challenges that we're facing as a sector, the opportunity that we have, and the future, my idea of the future of packaging. And I'm going to sneak preview, obviously, I'm going to say to an extent, it's the programme that I'm involved in. But I'll let you make your own minds up on that as we work our way through. You might have better ideas. The landscape. I'm going to use me as an example. In this one, I followed a really traditional pathway to join the packaging industry at the time. I went to Swindon College, of all the mighty esteemed institutions in the country, to study a degree in packaging design. During that, I did a placement that turned into a short-term contract at Dyson in their packaging team, which was pretty cool. Then went to work for Smurfit Kappa for about a dozen years, and moved into consultancy, working for a consultancy based out of Sheffield Hallam University. That's how I ended up here. I was in Sheffield to do packaging, not to teach packaging, to actually deliver it, consult on it, deliver value for industry. And that kind of route through the formal education, a little bit of placement work experience, and then moving into a first job and really getting to grips, that was pretty straightforward. You didn't just have to go to Swindon College. If you didn't think that sounded esteemed enough, you could have gone to Brunel, Loughborough, Surrey Institute of Art and Design, or even Sheffield Hallam University at the time. Any point between, it was actually slightly earlier than the 1990s, these courses existed before, and they carried on until the early noughties. A few of them might have staggered a little bit past 2002, but they were there. It was a relatively competitive environment. Okay, it's not like doing English language where every university offers it, but there were a number of universities with dedicated print programs, so packaging programs or print programs or packaging engineering programs. Across them, we had most parts of the industry covered. Moving on from that, as the noughties moved on, from 2002 to 2020, they're gone. None were left. By 2020, there wasn't a single undergraduate degree in packaging anywhere in the UK, none. People, if you wanted a degree in packaging, you had to go overseas. You had to go to France or Germany or to Chicago to do your degree. You know, it just didn't happen. They were finished here. And so what does that mean to us now? What does that mean for the packaging professionals that make up the current workforce in packaging? Much as Paul implied, or Paul stole, I had a equally scientific methodology, but skewed slightly more towards education, interestingly, probably because of my background. But yeah, of people that responded to me, around 60% didn't have any real connection to the industry at all. They didn't study for it. They didn't plan to join it. Some moved sideways. Most people just fell into packaging. So what does that mean realistically to the packaging industry? Well, it means that we've got a sector where less than half of its workers have an industry-specific education. And what that means is that we're not necessarily well set up to deal with industry-specific challenges if we don't have that industry-specific knowledge right as a foundational point upon joining. Fortunately, we don't have any challenges in packaging. Everything's straightforward, right? So there shouldn't be any issues whatsoever for us. We're fine. We don't need no education. Let's get extending Pink Floyd. I decided to go that way. Yeah, then things like this happened. And this is why our course exists fundamentally up at Sheffield Hallam University. Blue Planet 2 went off like a bomb for most of us who were working in packaging. I worked primarily in paper-based folding materials. I was getting grief after Blue Planet 2. It was pretty indiscriminate when it came to the sector. Now, I know that many of us will have different views on materials and on sustainability and what the right courses of action are, but I don't think there's anybody left that would say that there's literally nothing we have to do. Most of us recognise there are actual problems that need to be solved, that there are commitments that we've made that we need to stick to. And that's obviously a massive challenge and one that education can help deal with. But really importantly, sustainability is just one of the challenges. And sometimes it's not even the biggest challenge, or sometimes it's just part of a bigger challenge. But we've got a whole load of other crises going off in packaging. As a workforce, we're getting older. But in some ways, you know, I represented the last bright young thing joining the industry with a degree education until my students graduated. And that's a pretty poor state of affairs. There's not many people left who'd call me young. That means that there's a skill shortage in terms of those discrete, specific skills that you get given through degree level education. When we talk about the packaging industry, we also recognise there isn't really a packaging industry. It's made up. It's for packaging industries. We all work, or many of us work in different kinds of sector with different specialities, different materials, different equipment. We're not actually that great at working together. We compete a lot of the time, and that doesn't help us. And as Joe pointed out at the start, our profile hasn't always been as strong as it could be. And when you tie that all together with not having a clear educational pathway, it's a problem. It's a real challenge. People tried graduate schemes. Lots of companies run graduate schemes. Some of you on the call might have joined a graduate scheme and you stuck with it. But across packaging, graduate schemes average out at about 2 years. If you didn't particularly want to join a sector, okay, you didn't do a degree in packaging, you ended up getting a role in packaging, it wasn't what you were looking to do, you did a business and marketing or a material science, whatever your background degree is, you might not be so inclined to stick around in that job once you've had that first job and you've got a couple of years on your CV. That's not to denigrate graduate schemes. They can be really powerful, and if it's something that somebody really wants to do. But because we don't have that traditional pathway, we are relying on tempting people away from backgrounds and professions towards packaging, and it doesn't always work. So graduate schemes may be not fulfilling what industry wanted. So I phrase it again, it's a sector where less than half its workers have an industry-specific education. But we can flip that and think about as where the opportunity is, because that really means that more than half of workers in packaging have scope for professional development. That means that right now, half of the people alongside the brilliant work they've done on the job have that room to expand and gain that degree level knowledge and understanding we can use. And that's where apprenticeships come in, and not just the packaging apprenticeship. I'd say at Sheffield Hallam University, we are the country's largest provider of degree apprenticeships, and we cover a whole range of subjects, which I'd be happy to talk about in Q&A afterwards if anybody wants to. But I'm going to deal with a word first. The word apprenticeship has a connotation. When a lot of people hear it, even now, several years after degree apprenticeships have become much more normal across universities around the UK, a lot of people still hear the word apprenticeship and think junior. They maybe think mechanic and hairdressers, which are absolutely fantastic career paths, a conventional apprenticeship, if that's the route you want to take. But really, it's understanding what I would describe as being apprenticeships and continuing professional development. Apprenticeship courses aren't just designed for new starters to industries. They're designed for mid, senior and switching levels as well. The apprenticeship system is what we're using here, rather than thinking of it as being about new starters, people at the beginning of their careers. It can be, it's just not just them. Apprenticeships are an official thing. They're very much real. This isn't something we're just doing at Sheffield Hallam University, or we're making up for packaging. It's part of Department for Education's offer. It's overseen by the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. These are really legitimate, heavily overseen, heavily governed system. So if we're using it, we're doing it within a well-defined, well-managed and well-monitored system. And here's the curious thing, like all apprenticeships, they're fundamentally funded by government. I should put a big asterisk there, which I'll talk about later, because that statement might annoy some of you if you're budget holders inside your companies. But fundamentally, yeah, it's done using government money. And at Sheffield Hallam University, I said we offer lots of different degree programs, but we do specifically offer the Packaging Professional Degree Apprenticeship Bachelor of Sciences degree in the Department of Art and Design. And it addresses those opportunities that we highlighted earlier. It's unique. It was co-designed with industry. We didn't just come up with it ourselves in Sheffield Hallam University. These guys came up with it as a team. To run an apprenticeship, you have to make a case to government to say that there are not currently enough people arriving to industry with these degree level skills. If you have that case, that business case, which we had easily for packaging because of the lack of existing courses, GSK, Nestle, Unilever, Smurfit, they had no difficulty in making a case that we had to have a degree program to fit our sector. Once we got that approval, not only did we get approval to design a course, these guys designed the curriculum. They designed the things that they expected us to teach. It's not an ivory tower situation where a bunch of academics sit around and have developed a whole bunch of things that we think are important. It was designed by industry for industry. And beyond that, it wasn't just designed, like I said, starter as a level 4 undergraduate degree for a bunch of kids straight out of school. Yeah, they're welcome. And many of our students are new starters to industry, but we also have upskillers, people who've worked for a company for a period of time and have realized they have an opportunity to further develop those skills. And we have job changers, people who may be working in an organization, have plenty of maybe even degree level skill, but are moving into a packaging role for the first time. And between upskillers and job changers, they make up slightly more than half of our apprentices on our program. At any age, in the new cohort we have starting in January, we have students already signed up ranging from 18 to their mid-50s. It's very diverse, and that ranges from obviously no experience in the packaging industry through to 30 plus years of experience in the packaging industry. Now, that is what we think we're doing to address all of those different opportunities rather than problems, those challenges. We are having that opportunity to bring the other 40% of our program, who are young people straight from school. We are giving them diverse shared skills. We are doing that across the sector, regardless of what background you come from. We have no preference. We're very Swiss in our approach. We will not teach you that plastic is evil and paper must be used, but we will not teach you vice versa that either. We are evidence-based and contextualized. Everybody is welcome. And yeah, we are doing our best to boost the profile of packaging, and we are providing that educational pathway. And we already know so far, obviously not just from our program, this is rolling apprenticeships across the board. From the point of recruiting or appointing somebody as apprentice, we're getting an average of 8-year commitment, possibly longer. But what we do know is effectively 4 times the commitment that you get from a graduate scheme, which is quite a hit. So in terms of the program, why would anybody do it? Why do your employer want you to do it, apart from getting that longer commitment from you? Students absolutely love it. If you don't know anything about apprenticeships at this point, you'll be shocked to discover that there is no student debt. If you do a degree apprenticeship as a student, as an apprentice, you don't have to pay a single penny. It is completely free. Your employer can't even ask you to pay for any expenses that are involved. Everything has to be covered. You have to be paid in full whilst you're doing it. You don't get reduced wages. You will have to have a contract where you're committed to be employed for the duration of the program. And at the end of it, you will get a full undergraduate Bachelor of Sciences degree that is no different to any other university degree. It doesn't have an asterisk next to it. It is a degree. And you'll also get a Department for Education certificate to say that you have completed an apprenticeship. Mileage might vary on that one. We'll work out if people love it. But I think it will be seen as a good thing, because what it demonstrates is applied education rather than a theoretical education. It's proving that you've been out there not only studying, but applying it in the real world. But in terms of that mutual return on investment, you're also expected to do an awful lot for your employer. And so any employers who are considering apprenticeships, we know now from the employers we work with, specifically on the packaging program, that we do get increased productivity. Your apprentices will get multidisciplinary skills that they wouldn't have developed just within your workplace. They get that enhanced workforce knowledge. They are empowered to talk to other people in your organization that otherwise they may not have done, to be curious, to understand the bigger picture of your workplace and the bigger packaging picture. And broadly, people are really happy on the program because they feel invested in. And there is an asterisk this time, but again, it's also free for the company. We'll explain why that is later if you don't know, but any companies who do know, here we are funded entirely using the apprenticeship levy. You do not have to use your own money. If you're a levy paying company, the funding is entirely covered from your levy pot. If you're not a levy paying company, we can explain how we can help with that, but it's 95% funded, potentially up to 100%, because there are additional funding streams available. Now, getting on to the actual serious stuff, I'm going to go back one for a moment. That's a lot of jibber jabber and marketing and sales speak at this point, but in terms of the actual content of the program, this is where we live and die. And what we really teach, and what we were asked to teach by our employers, were 8 key themes. We cover material science, sustainability theory, supply chain functions and interactions, processes, manufacturing, business management, legislation. And we don't really teach a professional approach to work. You have to rely on people developing that themselves, but we can teach people the framework within which it exists and the ideas behind professionalism. We teach that not just in art and design or the Sheffield Creative Industries Institute, as it's being rebranded this year, but it's also taught by the Department of Engineering and the Sheffield Business School. That complex curriculum of those 8 key, very different areas. And I think some of you who are packaging people will understand why this is how it is. So many of us have to be generalists because the packaging workforce is relatively small compared to the impact of our sector. so many of us wear multiple hats. And this opportunity to have that broad, wide-ranging, holistic curriculum and having these three very different schools that deliver parts of the course means that you're getting something like a Bachelor of Arts degree, a Bachelor of Sciences degree, and an MBA all rolled up into a single program. And across those three schools and those 8 themes, we do all the things you'd expect us to do. So there's R&D, there's analytics, there's testing, there's reflective practice, all filtered throughout all the different areas, all ultimately centered around real projects and real work that you're doing in your workplace. So one great program, 8 themes, 3 schools, and a whole bunch of different knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Whizzing past your eyes slightly painfully right now are the 60 specific attributes that the Trailblaze group of employers suggested we needed to have. And that ranges from materials science specifics, understanding polymer science, all the way through down to championing of the environmental and sustainability mindset at the bottom end there. We didn't develop these things, but all of these things were specifically designed around values for your business and development for the apprentice. They're specifically supposed to be evidenced through work-based practice, and they are the things that we design all of our assignments to help apprentices achieve. It's all laid out at the start. Everybody can see exactly what they're aiming for at the beginning. So it's really about being practical and applicable. We focus almost entirely on doing these things on the real world, not doing them on paper. Like I say, it's not a traditional educational establishment. It's very much taking the University of Life approach to the University of University. We take into that nearly everybody who teaches on the course is from the industry. I mentioned earlier my background in packaging. My first boss from Smurfit Kappa, Phil Husband, recently retired from Smurfit Kappa as their Director of New Product Development. He teaches our new product development module because he seemed like a good fit. If there's no one else you can find to do it, get somebody whose background is an MPD. We have Azu teaching packaging technology, who works as a packaging technologist in Mars and Ferrero in Mexico. John as a consultant to FMCG and packaging manufacturers. Professor Alistair Yoxall is literally the UK's only professor of packaging. Some of you, if you're more academically inclined, might have read some of his papers because he is pretty much the foremost academic in packaging. All of these people, everybody involved in the program is a packaging person. You know, we're not traditional academics, and that's not denigrating traditional application of theory, traditional reading of theory. We are embedded in the application of theory. And we love doing it in Sheffield because it's a brilliant, vibrant city. We've got great facilities. We've got all of our labs and workshops, equipment. We invest millions every single year. We're actually moving the course into a new building from September onwards, including 360-degree projection theatres, testing laboratories, mobile testing kit. It's a great place to be. It's a nice place to study. It's also a long way from a lot of people, which is why we bring the vast majority of the course into your workplace. The entire program is delivered in 63 days. It's about a small amount of contact time in person that you could possibly have whilst doing a degree. And that's over a 3.5-year period. So you're spending significantly less than 5% of your time at university compared to how much your time you're spending at work. So that's why it's so vital that what we do is applicable, why it's contextualized, and why we look to build an individualized curriculum with each employer. Our part is to set up a transferable knowledge and skills exchange, and that's between us as staff to the students, but it's also the different workplaces and job roles of the other apprentices on the program. We have what's called an open cohort apprenticeship. Our apprentices work for lots of different companies at lots of different career stages. And that interchange and shared understanding helps that professional development. It's not just networking, although it can be networking and can be quite useful. It's that multidisciplinary perspective and knowledge sharing that doesn't happen inside a single workplace, no matter how good your in-house training is. Your part, if you choose to go with this and have an apprentice, is giving them the real world experience and application of the theory and concepts that we covered, which sounds nice and simple, can be surprisingly complex. Not every company has equal opportunity for that kind of development. We can help you with that. There are ways we can support you to ensure that people get those opportunities. If it's something you can't do as a company, we have it covered in the curriculum, don't worry. So, but what we do look for you to be able to do is to let your apprentices do the real world version of the things that the Trailblaze group said were important to the sector. So ultimately, it's very individualized. It looks very different to an apprentice in mid-career upskilling at a packaging manufacturer as it looks to an 18-year-old apprentice new starter working for a brand. But we will still be sharing a curriculum, a common understanding and a common future for the packaging industry. Those shared concepts and theories build us common ground that we can all work and progress, both as individuals and as a sector together. And that's who we're working with right now, more than 20 companies so far. And again, it's a real mixture of people across the packaging sector. We've got brands, we've got manufacturers, we've got business to business. We have pharma, we have FMCG. You know, we are happy to work with anybody. We honestly believe that if you have a job role or if you have a company function inside the packaging supply chain, we can help deliver value for you. And it's real. It really is real. At this point, it sounds like we're trying to promise the moon and it can't possibly deliver, but there they are. That's my first cohort of students wearing caps and gowns, getting real degrees. Obviously not the babies. We start young. We don't start that young. But it's a demonstration of how different our student body is. That actually we have more weddings, we have more babies than the average undergraduate degree does, because our students aren't conventional students. They are a much broader mix of people from different stages of life. And rather than being a difficulty, that is a huge strength. And it's not just one, there's number two. They haven't got their results yet, degrees pending. They finished last week. This course is real, this course is rolling. It's taken us time to penetrate the understanding of the sector that we're here, and what we're offering is legitimate, and it's not too good an offer to be true. And we know it's good because we have won over 30 major industry awards. Not we, our students have. And that ranges from upskillers picking up environmental packaging awards, Food and Drink Federation awards, Unilever Apprenticeship awards, right the way through on the left of the screen there to Francesca at GSK, winning the Department for Education's National Apprentice of the Year, the #1 apprentice in the UK, full stop. For us, for packaging, that did not happen, could not have happened any point in the last 20 years. It's time for us to step up and support this level of development. And we think the course is all right. I mean, South Yorkshire thinks we're okay. We won one. I haven't won 30 awards for it yet. We might win some more. You never know. But genuinely, we support the programme because we think it's brilliant. Whether you're a prospective apprentice looking at this presentation or this recording, or whether you're a potential employer, I genuinely, heartily believe that we have the experience and the resources to support your recruitment and development aims and ambitions all the way into the future. When I say future, I do mean the future, because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at changing demographics. We're looking at new materials emerging, new technology, legislation that never sleeps, supply chain challenges, decarbonisation, and many, many, many more. It never ends. And that's why we end our degree with a presentation evening every year of Packaging the Future, from linear to circular. It's going to be on the 25th of September this year. If anyone's interested, drop me a line or have a look on LinkedIn. I might be advertising it nearer the time. We focus a lot on the future on the programme. And that's because I think when we look through this programme, what we're trying to deliver against these challenges, we can turn our workforce into representative, knowledgeable, agile, adaptable, business-minded, carbon literate, and sustainability focused, whilst being geared for growth for you in terms of your companies. Every single one of those challenges can be turned into a future opportunity if we do it right, but only with education. So that's what I genuinely believe we're able to do here at Sheffield Hallam University with the Packaging Professional Degree Apprenticeship. I am very happy, and I'm sure Joe will too, to take any questions that you have.
I've got one for you straight away, Peter. Talk a little bit about the types of projects that the students do back in their workplaces. How does that, do they come up with the ideas? Does their business come up with the ideas?
All of our modules are thematic. So whether it's something like new product development, whether it's the fundamentals of packaging materials or packaging technology applied, there's a specific set of things they're looking for inside their company. Now, those are all mapped out way in advance. As soon as you sign up, you know what you're going to be studying in every given month. 3.5 years in advance, you know, it's set in stone. So it means that you can work with your company and start scoping out what products, what projects, or what ongoing work exists in your organization that has an intersection with those learning outcomes. And if you know it isn't going to happen, you can look for something blue sky or collaborative to do with somebody else. But yeah, we have a lot of work on new product development, opportunities inside companies, on machine trialing, on testing methodologies. And rather than it being a case of somebody just writing an essay about it, or, doing a little bit of reflection, effectively, you can submit what you're actually doing at work as evidence that you understand the learning outcomes on that module. You're actually turning, it's not that it's not more work. Of course, it's more work. You don't get a degree without having to work, but you can. It's why I use that University of Life analogy, which sounds a bit hackneyed, but is genuinely true. Rather than burdening you with more things to do, we look at ways of turning that work experience into a learning experience. And I think when I first started at Smurfit Kappa, I was nervous about going out and talking to the guys on the shop floor because, you don't want to look green, wet behind the ears, and you're supposed to be this designer who comes in who's, graduate who reckons he knows everything. If you go in as an apprentice, and the caveat that comes with it goes, as part of my degree or as part of my apprenticeship, I'm trying to learn about this. It completely changes people's perceptions of the conversations. It makes people feel more, and it shouldn't be, but genuinely it does work. It makes everyone more collaborative. It empowers the student to go out and look at the wider context.
I think it's the employer that's really important, because I think the concern is you bring an apprentice in, and to use your term, they're wet behind the ears. They're not going to be much use to us for 3.5 years, but actually they're running a full-time job. They are an employee who happens to be learning additional skills and bringing that into your workplace. So for the employer, it's incredibly powerful.
At the risk of bragging, one of the biggest problems we've had over the last 3 years with new starter apprentices is that they're getting promoted too early, which is really annoying. They still stay on the course, but in the first couple of years, it's brilliant because employers don't often, they don't necessarily think they're going to be adding masses of value really early. And they're quite often wrong about how much we expect them to be able to do, how much we expect them to lean in. All of a sudden, they're getting given the job. After 2 years, they're getting given the job they were expected to get after 3.5 years.
Brilliant.
But then all of a sudden, they suddenly have loads of business critical deadlines, and it becomes really stressful, and the last part of the course gets a little fraught. They always do great, but it's strangely...
It shows the reality of the balance. Is there more questions, Paul?
There are. I just love the idea of a senior manager being on an apprentice scheme, because they're just 2 years into the program.
It's happening.
Brilliant.
And we genuinely do. We do have people who are in significant packaging leadership roles on there. Again, you imagine that context in organizations where somebody's been in a leadership role in another part of the organization and gets given the packaging portfolio in a brand or a company, because they've got the leadership skills, they've got the management skills, but they don't really know packaging. And several of those have actually joined the program, and they're working alongside 18-year-olds, and you would not believe how well it works, just how vibrant it is.
Fantastic.
This is my question. I'm just going to get some of my questions in first. I'm really interested to know what does an average week look like for someone on the course. You mentioned about working in the business, but I mean, it probably isn't an average week. But tell me a Monday to Friday scenario, a typical one.
It's highly individualized, and it's very much dependent on how the company wants to design that apprentice's experience. Some larger organizations who maybe have the HR resources and ability, they can even have things like a full 3-month rota system where they have a student moving around different roles inside a company to experience the whole business. Some of them give every apprentice Fridays off to work, or not off, but to work on their university submissions. That does not happen. It's not recommended, and it's not something that we expect companies to be able to do. For a lot of other apprentices, the job that they're doing looks almost exactly the same as the job that they were doing before they joined the course. What actually changes is what's happening inside their head. Now, it's something I didn't quite cover in it. It's the really important difference between education and training. What we do fantastically well in the packaging industry is train people. So where we've got 60% plus, nearly 70%, as you had it, Paul, of people coming in without that knowledge and skills, we have no choice but to say that person who we know is probably capable, and we teach them how to do a thing that we want them to do. whether it's operating a machine, whether it's using a software system, whether it's filling in a whole bunch of internal KPI monitoring processes or keeping in contact with all these customers. Well, that doesn't teach, that teaches them that trains them how to do a thing. It doesn't teach them why we do the thing or what the theory behind the thing is or how the thing could be improved. And that's the crucial difference between training and education. So even if you've got somebody who come into the industry and is looking to gain that skill, the crucial difference happens not in the job necessarily, but in how they approach the job personally, because you're switching it from that training mindset to that education mindset. So what we'd expect is that for an upskiller, the job's going to look largely the same, but with a whole bunch more questions and a whole bunch more scrutiny of, but why are we doing it like this? What is the reason we're set up this way, you know?
And if I heard you correctly, it's 63 days over 3.5 years.
Yep.
So that's once a week?
Not quite. And in fact, if I might, we'll flip past what it costs and go straight to how does it work? I think this is one that sometimes covers a lot of questions. You might be not surprised to know that I get asked a lot of questions about some of the functional side of things. The course takes 3 years plus 6 months to do what's called an endpoint assessment. During the endpoint assessment, they're working just on one project in the workplace. So it's a much smaller commitment. Really, it's 3 years for the normal part of the course. Mm-hmm. We have 7 teaching blocks per year. So that's 21 days in a calendar year, effectively, that you spend on campus. They're always 3-day teaching blocks. They always run Tuesday to Thursday. That means that you always get to be in work on Monday. You always get to be in work on Friday. Often our students expect to be able to be contacted throughout as well if there's something business critical. We also tell students that, look, business does still come first. Apart from a couple of absolutely unmissable things, if there's absolutely a reason why you can't do that particular block, we'll find a way around it, you know, just as long as you can make most of them. We do top it up with online sessions, all of which are recorded. So if you can't make it live, you can just watch the recording at a later date. So the in-day commitment, the in-person commitment is just 63 days. So it's not
7 lots of 3 days per year.
Yeah, effectively.
Cool.
We also always avoid December. So anybody who's working in the food supply chain or anyone in some of logistics knows why that is, obviously. So we don't put deadlines or teaching in December. We tend to be a little front loaded. We do more because so much of what we do is setting people up on medium-term projects. Most of our teaching's done in the first sort of half of the year, and the second half of the year is contextual application. It moves slightly as the program moves, but that's broadly how it works.
Excellent. Answer your question, Paul.
Yeah, I've got some questions. Do you have a list of employers that offer the course, this course, in the first person? I've asked my current company, but they won't send me on it. Alternatively, do you have any literature, etc., that could encourage my company to take part in this?
Well, I can. If you just make contact with me afterwards, you'll notice my email address is tucked down in the bottom corner. Drop me a line. I'm always happy to talk, and that goes to anybody, not just the question asker in this one. I'm very enthusiastic about the program. I'm happy to share resources. You'll find that there should be some links on the slide deck that comes in. It obviously won't work with a screen recording, but I'm happy to email over this presentation. You can send a link to this recording, but I do have some discrete text. Alternatively, I'm very happy to meet with your employer to talk about where the advantage might be. Even if that doesn't work out and it's still no dice, just let us know what you're really thinking. We'll see what we can do to help. What I would say is that you do have to have, if I go back to one of my slides, no, it doesn't quite do it. You do have to have a job to do it. You can't do it without workplace approval. I do think the course is suitable for a huge range of different roles, because that holistic knowledge, that transferable knowledge is really important, whether you're working as a tech, whether you're working as a designer, whether you're working as a print manager. It's got real transferable application, but you do have to get your employer to say yes. We do occasionally get employers that ask us to recruit for them. That is something that I was going to hope somebody would ask about, but I might get onto that. Because we're a university, we're able to use the government gateway, which is the main portal that students who are looking for apprenticeships go to. If you search gov.uk/apprentices, you'll be able to find the portal. And any of our employers who are looking to recruit a new starter packaging apprentice will advertise through that gateway. Or indeed, if you're an employer watching this, we can advertise through that gateway on your behalf, something you can't do without. That's where, I mean, this is the first, maybe the brightest and best students, the most engaged, the ones who are looking for an apprenticeship, go looking. And it means that you can change the map of who it is you're potentially taking on as an apprentice, because they're willing to move, even, for roles that we wouldn't traditionally think as being relocatable roles. We have students that move from one end of the country to the other because the opportunity is so good.
Just from personal experience, I have a 22-year-old who dropped out of university. He was at Glasgow during COVID and just a horrendous experience. So he dropped out, took a year out, and he's landed a degree apprenticeship in the pharmaceutical industry. And exactly as Peter says, he's doing his day job. They actually give them Mondays off to do their university work, and then he does certain blocks. He's getting that feel, kids at 18 particularly, they want the university experience. He's getting that on the blocks. When he goes, they're all in a hotel, they're all, together as students, but then he's going back and working full time. And as you said, the commitment to the company is just huge, because he knows the company has stepped up to enable him to do this. And compared to the 2-year retention that you get on graduate programs, it's just a different game completely. And they're getting all that. I said to him, when you finish, even if you decide to walk away from your company, you've got 4 years experience in the pharmaceutical industry. So it's massive for the youngsters that come through.
I think for our designers that go through, because it's my background in sector, but obviously only one small part of the course, but you come out, you enter as a junior, and by the time you get your degree, you're leaving as a middleweight.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You are getting, the fast track is extraordinary.
Yeah.
Some of these, the younger new starters, they are at the time which, if they'd gone to a conventional university route, would be just starting the first week of their first job, or already 4 years down the line, and are sometimes getting into mid-senior roles.
No debt, and they're being paid better.
Yeah, with no debt.
Yeah.
And I'd say as well, if you look at that, you can employ an apprentice from under £18,000 a year, which doesn't sound like a particularly attractive salary anymore. But you've got to remember, you're effectively adding £100,000 saving across those 3 years because of what that student isn't borrowing, the debt that they're not accumulating.
Yeah.
So I do honestly, it allows companies to attract people into roles that we simply weren't attracting beforehand.
Right, we have some more questions and just over 10 minutes left. So to what degree does your program invest in things like structural design, packaging, graphics and branding? Quite specific. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Very specifically, we teach principles, but we don't have, you can imagine, in 63 days the time to teach, the entire of design theory, the entire of every process. It has to be something that you can try and access through your workplace, because it's workplace learning. So if you are working in a department that has, if you're working as a designer, obviously you're expected to access support from the rest of the design teams. You're expected to use the software that you have in-house and to use those opportunities to develop live, but using the framework that we set up around it. There are online resources. I'm just going to skip through to a support slide I had right at the end, because I think it's quite relevant. When you're on campus, we've got great physical facilities when it comes to machinery kit. I know I've got a screen printer there, just happen to have it. I tell you, it's so much fun learning to screen print, and you can actually do it whilst you're on campus. When we're here, and even though you're only here officially 63 days, you're welcome. You're considered by the university to be a full-time student. So if your employer lets you have the time, you can come on campus and spend as much time as you want learning any of the things, accessing any of the resources. We work in a massive art and design department, so we've got astonishing resources. But recognizing you won't necessarily get that much time, we do have really good online resources from Artios, CAD and CAPE, which are online floating licenses that you can access from your workplace. We also, through LinkedIn Learning, have a curated set of online courses that are kind of like follow-on learning. So it becomes part of the course, but everybody assembles what they need. So say if you're a packaging technologist from pharma who's never going to touch design, if we spend a huge chunk of a program delivering discrete design related education. That's not adding value. So what we do is we ask people to self-direct towards the areas of specific development whilst giving them the overview of each area. But yeah, and that includes, so everyone signing up gets the full of Adobe Creative Cloud, SolidWorks, Artios, Cape. That's Granta EduPack, which is the University of Cambridge's LCA software. We have a really compelling, you get access to about £1 million worth of software, which you have to use for academic purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Couple of other questions from the floor. Sort of a admin one here. Is it an academic year or a calendar year start?
It's calendar year. We start in January every year. Until we're going to be revalidating at some point because our calendar's a little bit funky. The actual first academic year of the course lasts 14 months. So it bends people's mind a bit, but we end up with overlapping cohorts. But no, we start in January every year. Our applications go whizzing backwards. Does it work? No, it's not the right one. Still, we start in January every year, but we close for applications in mid-October time. That's because when we have new starters joining, we don't want people starting on ideally, they can do, there's nothing stopping it, but you don't really want your first day on program to be your first day at work as well. We'd rather people had a couple of months in the business before they took over, before they start the program, because we want them, if you come straight from school, you don't have any real knowledge of the company, the processes, the materials. That first couple of months of doing that really good in-house training that we know companies are already doing, otherwise there wouldn't be a packaging industry and none of us would be here. You can start doing that, you can get that understanding, and then when you come in for the first session, we start contextualizing it. You know, that's how we think it works best.
We start with the companies ideally September, October, and then the course officially starts in the January of each year.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And there we are. That's the one I was looking for. It's an online application. All you need to do is reach out and talk to me about it. They are open now. I've said end of September. We can usually stretch it to mid-October. You do have to get a sign-off from your employer. We do also ask, if you're thinking of doing it but haven't got it yet, you ask to reserve a place so we can start working on numbers. Obviously, we have to scope. We have to book things like the rooms that we're going to teach in advance. And so if everybody rushes at the end, it can be really difficult. There are entry requirements. It's like you do with any university, UCAS points, if anybody's been through this system before. We're tariffed at 120 credits, which is BBC in old A-level money. But we have flexibility in that we also take into account experience. That's especially important for any upskillers who are thinking of doing this. It doesn't matter if you haven't got a single qualification to your name. If you feel that you've got professional experience that will give you the grounding to allow you to study at this level, all you need to do is let me know about it, and I can give you effectively an exemption based on your prior experience. And even if you don't have your English and Maths GCSEs because school just didn't work for you, we will help you get those free of charge through the Sheffield College, so you can get your foundational education with us as well at the same time.
Okay. In terms of sort of influencing potential new students, is the information you provide given to potential students and parents through schools?
I do talk to schools a bit, but it's largely about making sure they understand what apprenticeships are. Because I know I said it right near the top, but that word still carries kind of, because we've had a long apprenticeship culture in the UK, and that used to be attached to manual trades and manual skills. People still associate it with being young, not being academic, and it being at an entry level. Whereas that's what we're trying to get a paradigm shift on, that understanding that it is also a CPD, is higher level learning. There are master's level apprenticeships, you know. So we do talk about school. My daughter knows loads about apprenticeships, which is terrifying, and she knows that she absolutely does not want to do the packaging one, which breaks my heart because she can't think of anything worse than having me teach her. I'm going to work on her, yeah, you never know.
One last question really to wrap things up. So if someone is interested either as an employee or an employer, what's the next steps? What should someone do?
depending on how firm your commitment is, if you're absolutely certain this is for you, just get in touch. We can send you an application link, and it's a pretty straightforward process, but it walks you through what you have to write about, what you need to upload, and you can just start submitting that application. Once you apply, you get things that are laid out here, like a workplace suitability check and a skills scan, and you get a visit from a work-based learning coach. But we can support you through that whole process. We genuinely recommend you get it started sooner rather than later, even if you've not necessarily fully made the decision to commit just yet. You can start the process and then decide not to do it. If you're still trying to get a bit more understanding, I point you again to the bottom left corner to my email address. I'm very happy to talk about individual circumstances. It's not just me. We have employer partnership managers who would be happy to talk to your bosses, your company, to talk about value, to talk about how the finances work, because there are a couple of little fiddly things you have to do. You have to give Sheffield Hallam University permission to access your levy funding account. And, you know, so there are steps and processes, but we can support you with all of that. The first step, talk to us. That's all you need to do.
Brilliant. Joe and Peter, thank you very much for your time. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you to all the thank you to everyone that's attended. As I said, the recording will be available tomorrow, and we'll also be sending out various outputs, including sort of links to various bits of information, additional information. So thank you all very much for attending, and see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.